This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
That's not the disappointment. That happens in games. Goaltender makes saves, posts, all those things happen in games. So it's how you get to the point. Ultimately, it's like the final score. Yeah, loss is disappointing, but it's how you got there is what you should be judging everything on. Hence called the process. And I have to give Vancouver all the credit in the world. I mean, they're down halfway through a hockey game. They're down 2-0. We probably had more goals than they had shots on net halfway through the game. And what did they do? They just kept going, and they kept trying, and they just kept going, understanding a game is 60 minutes, not 30. And then the other team is up to feeling pretty good about themselves to the point where, it's like the tortoise and the hare? That's what it was. It was a tortoise and the hare. And one team got comfortable. And in this league, the second that happens, you're done. And we got comfortable. They stuck with it. And the right team won the game.
Interesting. Heard those comments yesterday on the last call.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of a message John Cooper was trying to send, potentially, to his team, right? That's how I interpreted it, Remember
we had a fan after a loss recently. Was it the Ranger game? Maybe it was
trade everybody. Game. No, I'm just
No, the fan was saying, I love how John Cooper always sticks by his players. And I'm like, well, depends on the loss.
Yeah.
That Ranger game, he really loved the compete that his team gave him. And they had some bad breaks go against them. And they made some mistakes, but the effort level was there throughout. And they were also extremely shorthanded, which he didn't use as an excuse. This one was different. You could hear in his answer, he wasn't exactly pumping his guys up. He basically said they got comfortable, and the Lightning, if they were the hare, they took a nap.
Yeah.
That's what happened in the fairy tale, right?
I thought
lose the race.
Yeah, I actually thought he was going to mention that if we played this game 10 times, very similar to the Rangers, that we would come out with points more times than not, however you want to phrase it, for a couple of reasons. One, you're up 2-0. Two, you're out shooting the opponent. What was it, 13-1 at the end of 20 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, you make that kind of statement early on, you're doing a lot of things right. So there were some things there to start the game that I think John Cooper and his staff had to feel pretty good about. Oh, by the way, partner, you're still out a ton of players who typically are in the lineup. I think we have to keep in mind understanding that factor. He didn't go that route. We can talk about maybe the difference between those two games. You mentioned maybe he was trying to say it was more of the effort. I don't know. I don't think guys intentionally aren't trying to go out there and compete, but maybe not as sharp as they needed to be in certain situations.
I think you're saying they got comfortable.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, that Vancouver performance in the first period, I mean, the Lightning have had some doozy performances this year in not a good way. I mean, their first period in Vegas, where they fell behind by a couple of goals, that was extremely poor. The Lightning have had periods where they've given them more scoring chances than Vancouver did in the first period. I thought Vancouver, the one thing Vancouver did in the first period was at least not let the floodgates open, where Lankinen was dealing with like 15 scoring chances.
Right.
I mean, the Lightning had some, but Vancouver's performance in the first period was not NHL worthy. Like, I don't know if the Canucks were flat or just they didn't start on time. They couldn't execute at all with the puck. I mean, it wasn't just that they only had one shot on net. They only had 6 shot attempts. They didn't do anything with the puck in the first period. And unfortunately, in some ways, that may have worked against the Lightning, as much as, we may hate to say it, that you're seeing that poor of a performance from your opponent. Maybe in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, this is going to be kind of a cruise control kind of game. Vancouver picked it up, not sure Vancouver picked it up like going from 0 to 60. The Canucks definitely picked it up, though, in the second period, and the Lightning, they became flat.
Sure.
And really what happened, so what was the story of Sunday's game? And we do deserve to praise, where the Lightning deserve to have us praise their performance in Sunrise on Saturday. So this is not only going to be a show detailing the loss, we will also go over the win, which got a lot of attention leading into that game on Saturday. But to me, the Sunday game was the formula for Vancouver. They got timely, excellent goaltending, which they did. They won the special teams battle. They got timely plays. They made timely plays. And they got some bounces, for sure. But they earned what they got. Like the first few things that I mentioned were not related to bounces. Lankinen played very, very well. They objectively won the special teams battle. They went 2 for 3 in the power play. The Lightning went 0 for 2. The Canucks came in with the worst penalty kill in the NHL by a wide margin. At least they were very far down. They were at 66%. So on average, they were allowing a goal every 3 chances. That is not really sustainable if you're going to hope to have success during a regular season, but they did the job against the Lightning. Whether it was the Lightning on the power play or Vancouver on the penalty kill, those 2 kills that they had, though, the Canucks near the end of the second period kept that game 2-1. Those were big, big kills, and they got through them. And the biggest difference then, once we got into the third period, was, and this was something we heard from some of the players post-game, it wasn't that the Lightning started giving up odd man rushes all over the place or, as we've often heard Coop say, we fueled the other team's attack. I'm not sure it was that so much, but a very important part of defending, in zone especially, is how you're defending in front of your net. And what the Lightning did fairly well, even in the second period where they did less with the puck, they only had 10 shot attempts in the second period, so you could see it was turning. But they didn't really give up much either. DeBrusk scores his goal on a rebound in front on the power play. What did we see in the third period, though? Vancouver guys in front open. I mean, on the Gensel goal, Gensel and Kachuk are both in front with a chance to tip that puck. Gensel's the one who tips it. Vancouver had a breakdown on that particular play because it really wasn't much of a chance. Like, Chernak just risks it to the net. The problem wasn't that the shot was taken, because the shot was taken from a non-dangerous area in the ice. The problem for Vancouver on the Gensel goal was Gensel was open in front with his stick free. Mm-hmm. What happened in the third period? Vancouver players were not boxed out. Their sticks were not tied up. You got to do one or the other. You got to clear them away and establish inside position, or you got to make sure their stick isn't free to get a tip. Now, the one that tied the game at 2, that was a high tip from Sherwood. It hits Moser's skate or whatever and goes in. It was a bad break, but the Lightning opened the door by taking a penalty in the offensive zone, and then they lost the faceoff. So that was more probably in the line of a bad break, but you're not executing, right? You need to win the faceoff and get it down the ice. The next goal, which was the killer goal to me, starts with the Lightning in possession of the puck in the defensive zone. Kucherov makes a pass from the side to the middle, fairly dangerous area to Crozier, who's not expecting the puck to come to him. Maybe Crozier should expect the puck to come to him. Maybe Kucherov could do something else with the puck. Kucherov's a good enough skater. He can just skate that out. He tries to make a pass. Crozier's not expecting the pass. It kind of bounces off his stick, but it still ricochets up the boards to Point. Point fails to get the puck out. Got his stick lifted. And Mackenzie McEachran then gets a break. I think he fumbles the puck or he tries to shoot. It basically comes right back to him. He shoots it to the net, and Carlson has net front. He's open for a tip. Lightning lost coverage on him, but they also had a turnover. The next goal, the 4-2 goal, 2 guys in front. O'Connor gets the tip. And then the 5th goal also went off Destu, but McEachran is there for a tip. So Yeah, you can say the Canucks got some bounces, and they did, but they earned their bounces, and they had a willingness to shoot, and they got guys to the front of the net, and the Lightning didn't defend well enough in front of their net. That was why they really lost the lead and fell behind in the third period. They did not defend to the standard that they needed to defend, and defending has all different components to it. It's puck management, it's limiting turnovers, it's rush coverage. This was a part of team defense. The Lightning, they get a very, very low grade in the third period after they'd done a good job in that regard in the first two periods, boxing out. And usually that's not really been a problem for the Lightning, but it definitely was last night. So the Canucks scoring at that rate is rare. Like, you're just throwing pucks to the net and they're going in. It seemed like that's what happened in the third period. And maybe to your point, if we play that, not even the whole game, we play the third period over again 10 times. Did the Canucks score 5 goals on 11 shots? The way they scored them. No odd mans, basically. They were just wristed pucks to the net that, like, deflected in, pinballed in, whatever. Then there was the empty netter from like 180 feet where the guy just wheels and shoots it and it goes right in the middle of the net. That might have been a little rare too. But the 4 other goals that gave the Canucks really an insurmountable lead, maybe if we play that third period over, not all of them go in, but maybe some of them do. If you're not taking care of the area in front of your goalie, you're asking for trouble. And the turnover on the 3-2 goal was certainly avoidable. You're in possession of the puck. You're on your way out of the defensive zone on the shift after you've lost the lead. That is a crucial, crucial shift. And it was the top line for the Lightning that didn't get the job done. So there in a nutshell is your ball game. Lightning also had some, Destu scores. They challenge. Gensel high sticks the puck down. I never actually saw the play because they were looking for it. And I never actually saw if he high sticked it. It had to be over his shoulders. I guess it was clear.
Close. It was close.
Yeah, you saw it. So again, close. If it's at his shoulders, he knocks it down. It's fine. The Lightning get the goal. But that's kind of the way it went last night.
So, a couple of things on my end, and I agree with what you said. And by the way, we've said this a number of times with the Lightning when they've been outplayed in the first period. If they're only trailing by 1, we often say, you know what? What's the other team thinking? They probably...
It did become 2, though, early in the second.
It did become 2.
It was a 2-goal lead.
It did become 2. So, maybe there's a little bit of that. Such a difference in shots. And, look, 1 shot in a period. That is pretty incredible, pretty remarkable. So, a few things stood out, and I think you touched on them, but I want to reiterate these points, and then we can get to some listeners and their take. Partner Boris Kachuk sent down to Syracuse today. We want to let everybody know there. Hopefully, the Lightning are able to get some players back. Maybe
Sounds
even
like
starting tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be helpful. Hagel did come back yesterday, so that was positive. All right. So some things that stood out for me. The power play continues to be a problem, and that was a game last night where you could have extended the lead. And you didn't. And it almost, as Brian Engblom said on the postgame, you and I have talked about this. You've made this point. If you're not able to score on the power play, at least have it create some momentum. It might have done the opposite yesterday for Tampa Bay, amongst other things, for sure. That we will get into the power play. I'm not necessarily saying we have the answers, because, of course, if John Cooper did have the answers, we would see the fruits of those decisions coming to these games. I have a couple of ideas, but the power play is not working. That was a big problem. I actually thought the fourth line was very good again. Problem being, and this is a big deal, Scott Sabourin can't take 2 penalties because he takes that second one in the third period and then the floodgates open.
Yeah.
Whether you think it had anything to do with Vancouver creating that momentum, how many unanswered goals, partner, did they score after that penalty? Was it 5? If you want to include...
And 6, they scored 6 unanswered overall in the game. But yes, 5 in the third.
After that penalty, you just can't do it. And that one we thought was unavoidable. Or avoidable, I should say. I understand what he's trying to do. And like I said, let me preface this by saying I liked a lot of what the fourth line has done, not only last night.
He hit the crossbar in the first period, Sabourin.
He did. But was it... Again, Brian brought up the point that... I forget who he was talking to. Oh, it was Kobe. He brought up a Kobe story on the TV side. The reason that line has been pretty effective, in addition to what they've created, has been the fact that they haven't been taking penalties. And there you go. You can't have your fourth line take penalties that's going to impact the game in a negative way. Be that as it may. That clearly happened. Bad puck luck. That happens every game, but it felt like even more so last night. I mean, it was just unusual.
2 games at home in a row now. The Lightning have been on the wrong end of the puck luck meter.
For sure. And that was, people say, well, that's hockey. Okay, that's fine. But we can point it out. It did in some ways.
The pendulum will eventually swing back.
It will. Disappointing because I thought they played a good game against Florida. And, you felt like this was an opportunity where, maybe you're able to munch some points together, but you get that important one on Saturday. Vancouver, maybe there was going to be a letdown.
We wonder that, but there wasn't at the beginning of the game.
At least early on, for sure. So I'm not sure we can use that as an excuse. Quinn Hughes is a dynamic player. That stood out pretty clearly. You want to talk about like troubles on the power play? Get a player like Quinn Hughes. He moves everywhere. I mean, that puck follows him. He is a dynamite player, and we don't get a chance to see him often, partner. That really stood out, how much better he was than most people on the ice.
I love Quinn Hughes as a player, and I said on the air, that might have been the quietest game I've seen from Quinn Hughes.
I know.
Since he's been in the NHL. We only see him twice a year, and he had 4 assists.
Yeah.
So one of them, he took a shot. O'Connor tipped it in. His other 3 assists were all secondary assists. He basically just passed it to somebody, and then that player took a shot that led to a goal, but they count, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he gets his 4 assists, and that's just the mark of a great, talented offensive player that, when he's on the ice, good things can happen for his team. Even though I felt that I've seen him way more dynamic than he was last night. Coming back from injury, too.
Yeah, I mean, that stood out. And then probably the biggest thing here's the part that you really have to temper your emotions, I think, especially if you're a fan. But I think if you're somebody who covers a team objectively, which we try and do, you can't be hyperbolic. But there's no doubt Braden Point and Oliver Bjorkstrand are struggling. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you this with Bjorkstrand, for me to see it, who's not a professional player or coach, I'm sure the coaching staff is seeing it because it really feels like that puck is exploding off of his stick. And the power play, there is a lack of confidence. I mean, Kucherov is trying to go cross ice to him, and it's either exploding off of his stick, he's falling down, and then to make matters worse, because we have a great view, we can see everything. You look at Kucherov's facial expressions or his body language, and it is just, I mean, it's not great, and some of that is frustration, but you can tell it's like, I'm setting these guys up and nothing is happening. And that can have an effect. Maybe I'm reading into that too much. Bottom line is, Point and Bjorkstrand specifically are 2 guys you're relying on offensively. I know they will come out of this. It is just, now it's glaring how much they are struggling. And it is going to impact particularly the power play. When those guys, let's face it, they get paid a lot of money to do a lot of things. One of them is to be effective on the power play. And if it's not happening, you can see how out of sort they are. Is it a confidence issue? For sure. I think that's exactly what it is. What are some options? We'll get into it, but I want to get your thoughts initially on what I said, because I think, are there some things they can do? They've tried some other things, some players returning. Maybe you mix and match a little bit, but it is apparent, particularly Bjorkstrand, but I think you can throw a Point in here. I mean, this is a slump. And they got to work themselves out of it.
Well, Bjorkstrand has 1 goal. He scored it in the first period of the first game. I mean, he knows. I'm still going to go back to kind of my old standby, which is if they start scoring, I think a lot of this will take care of itself. And I will point out,
agree with you.
Even as they had a tough weekend and they didn't score in the power play statistically, and they had a lot of power play time that didn't do much for them, Jake Gensel did have 2 tremendous chances, 1 in each game, and was stopped. So it doesn't mean that you have to go like 5 for 5 in the power play. They had the little run there of 3 for 3 from the at Vegas game into the home Washington game, if you recall, Greg, and then they've gone, dry again. But, that pass Kucherov to Gensel, he made it twice. Bobrovsky stopped Gensel on Saturday in the first period, and Lincoln stopped Gensel in the second period in the Sunday game. You start putting those in, even if you're maybe only getting one chance in a game on the power play in 3 or 4 opportunities. I think that's what can start to kind of help you gain some swagger. So, I mean, they're kind of limited in a way based on how they want to set up the power play. They need the righties at forward. If Kucherov is going to be at the right circle, they really need 2 righties with him. The defenseman can be Hedman. I mean, that can be a lefty. I think Radish has done fine, though, on the power play, honestly. I mean, when he's been out there, he has looked to shoot. And, I even noticed that the Lightning are having more problems bringing the puck into the offensive zone with Radish out there instead of Hedman. And Radish actually broke up a 2-on-1 shorthanded bid the Canucks had as well in the second period. So I think he's doing what is being asked of him, short of scoring. But you can have a lefty on defense, and the Lightning have had a lefty as the defenseman playing the point. It's who is the other forward besides Point and Gensel and Kucherov? If it's going to be a righty, that opens the door for Kucherov to be at the right circle. Once you put in a lefty, you're having to sacrifice something. Either a lefty is at the Bjorkstrand spot, which means you're taking away the one time, or you're moving Kucherov to the left. And they've done that a little bit this year, but I think this is really their preference of how they want to set up the power play. So if that's their preference, maybe they stick with it and see if it can click into gear tomorrow when they play the Devils, or maybe they make a change. Now, we can get into what happened at practice today. I'm a little surprised they practiced, actually. I got the schedule, and I guess I didn't pay attention to it for the month of November, because usually after a back-to-back, there's no practice. It's an off day. But, it wasn't an onerous travel weekend, and both games were at 5 o'clock. So they practiced today. I think Wednesday is a scheduled off day. So they practiced today. Hedman, James, and Cirelli, along with Hagel, who came back on Sunday, were all on the ice. Fingers crossed that they'll be able to return, maybe as soon as tomorrow. If Cirelli returns, and the fact that they send Kachuk down is a good indication that at least one, if not 2 of those forwards are going to be able to come back to the lineup, he is an option on the power play, both as a guy to be part of the unit and or to take faceoffs, which he has done so far this year.
Yep.
So we'll see if they decide to make a change from the unit with Bjorkstrand on there.
Let's dive in. It's probably a good segue. And if people are listening, which they are, and we want to get them involved at Bullets Radio, you can certainly do that. A big part of me says we can come up with some different things they should do personnel-wise, but the most effective way this team's going to snap out of the power play issue is that the guys who are there are just going to perform like they have in the past.
Yeah.
Understanding this is a copycat league, so you need to adjust. And it is pretty clear this started in many ways when, Kucherov brought this up in training camp, that he felt like the power play maybe had more bang against inferior teams, or maybe teams that had less efficiency on the
non-playoff
PK.
Teams, he said, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if that set the tone a little bit, so people were going to be watching what this power play was going to be looking like. Clearly, he's saying we need somebody who is a threat on the opposite side of me, where I'm typically parked. Bjorkstrand, we thought, because of his shot, was going to be a guy who could provide some of relief that Stamkos provided when he was there with those one-timers, understanding Bjorkstrand's not the same player as Steven Stamkos, and really not even the same stratosphere. We understand that. All right. So, that being said, I think you're kind of limited with what you can do outside of let's really hope these guys figure it out. Bjorkstrand should start to even out here and provide some goals. He's been a 20-goal scorer his whole career, there's no reason to think, at least on the power play, he can't get a couple that gets things moving for him. I also threw this out early in the season, probably in training camp, but maybe early on. And this is where you kind of get a little dicey when you start throwing out stuff that you don't want to reinvent the wheel, because you've got to also be looking at this and be fair with your analysis that, okay, what legitimately can be done and what are you just throwing and hoping it sticks on the wall and it's an explanation. I had mentioned the other option is you could make Kucherov more of a shooter on the power play. I understand he likes to pass first. We saw the play yesterday, though. Radish to Kucherov on the one-timer. Yeah. Now, the thing there is, there's two. One, you've got to be able to get a guy who can feed him appropriately for the one-timer. And then two, which is probably the biggest one, Kuch has got to be willing to shoot. So I'm trying to come up with a solution where you're not moving a ton of pieces around and, potentially could work. In other words, I could sit there and say, Dave, let's put 5 forwards out there and let's see what happens. Yeah. Nice, probably not going to work. You could talk about, well, let's put Curtis Douglas in front of the net and have that big 6'9" frame and take the eyes away. Fine. Some of the things we had mentioned, by the way, I don't think that's an option. We could talk about getting more shots through. Easier said than done. I certainly think that's valid. No doubt about it. But logically looking at this, outside of them going out and trading for a power play specialist, which, by the way, is kind of Bjorkstrand, it's why you got him and why he's making over $5 million a year, either he's got to figure it out and you just go through these slumps and know that they'll work themselves out. Braden Point will start to figure it out, and I'm okay with that plan because those guys have been there, done it. But outside of, bringing in somebody new, you could sit here and say, okay, if we do need to try and change things up a bit more, maybe it is Kucherov is looking for a shot more. Again, it may not seem like that's a breaking news type of analysis, but it's something that at least you can control. And does it alleviate some of that burden he's having going cross ice? And they're not even getting a shot off. There's no threat opposite Kucherov. So sometimes you take matters in your own hands and say, well, maybe I become the shooter.
Yeah.
That's a couple of things I'm throwing out. I don't think they're drastic because I think you have to be fair with the analysis. I don't think they're going to do anything crazy. I think that last one with Kucherov shooting has to be more of a mindset too. I don't even know if we can go there with that because I know he likes to pass first on the power play, which Phil talks about a lot. So...
yeah, look, they are going to have to figure this out. Whether it's they keep the same setup and they do the same things and they just execute better.
Yeah.
Or they make modifications either with personnel, where players are located on the ice, or mindset. I remember I had a conversation with Stamkos a couple of years ago when he was still on the team, and what he said was, I'm not a shooter just to shoot. I shoot to score.
Yeah.
Basically saying, I'm not just going to shoot for the sake of shooting. I shoot when I have an opportunity to score. So he is a more selective shooter. He always has been. There are other guys who have big shots like Stamkos who go for volume, right? Ovechkin is one of those guys. That's why Ovechkin, through much of his career, was usually leading the NHL or one of the top guys in shots. Stamkos is never going to be one of the top guys and hasn't been in shots taken. But his shooting efficiency, his shooting percentage is going to be higher because he takes a shot when he thinks he has a chance to score.
And he's so precise.
He's so precise. Right.
For sure.
So I think Kucherov has some of that in him.
Yes.
Where Kucherov is not overly interested in shooting just to shoot. So when does Kucherov shoot? And we're talking really on the power play. I think there are 3 instances when Kucherov shoots on the power play. One is when he's getting the puck back for a one-timer. And we've seen him shoot on one-timers and score, and he did it 5-on-5 last night. He likes that because the goalie is moving.
Yeah.
Right? Another is right off a face-off. And he did this a couple of times recently on the power play. I think he did it maybe twice in the Florida game where Bobrovsky had to make a save, where Point wins the faceoff, or maybe Gensel wins the faceoff, and he's standing outside the circle, but usually toward the middle of the ice. Puck comes to him and he snaps it. So it's not quite a one-timer, but it's more of a bang-bang play. Sure. Like he's trying to catch the goalie a little bit more unaware, okay? And then the third is what we see him do more infrequently, but he does do it sometimes. It's how he scored the power play goal against Ottawa on opening night. If you remember that play, Greg, he has it. It's on his stick, and he kind of angles from the circle toward the middle to give himself a better angle because he's more in the middle of the ice, and he snaps it. He scored against Ottawa like that. We don't see that as much. What you are advancing is basically saying when he has the puck at the circle and he's the conductor and he's looking to make a pass to somebody, you're saying he should just shoot it. Maybe it doesn't go in, but maybe this opens up some other stuff. And Phil has said the same thing. But when you talk about mindset, that is just not something that Kucherov has done really in his career on the power play. What he likes to do is shoot the one-timer. If it's on your stick, it's not a one-timer. And he's not really interested in having it, let's say, at the dot or just above the dot, looking to make a pass, can't get it to Point, can't get it to Bjorkstrand, so he just risks it to the net. But maybe they're going to go to that. Who knows? There is one other thing that they could do with this unit that we haven't seen a lot this year, and I don't know if this is worthwhile in terms of more of a permanent setup. Sometimes the players have rotated, but that's Point at the left circle and Bjorkstrand the bumper. Bjorkstrand has not played the left circle a lot in his time in the NHL in the power play. I think we've touched on this on an earlier show because I asked him. Mm-hmm. When he's been on the power play with other teams, he's been in the bumper or he's been at the right circle, his strong side. This is a different position for him. Point, similarly, has mostly been in the bumper, but we did see Point at that left circle for a bit last year, and the two of them could swap. And maybe they just start the power play with Point at the circle and Bjorkstrand in the bumper. Because we really haven't seen that a lot this year. But again, to me, it just comes down to execution. And they executed a little bit. Like even over the weekend where the power play didn't score, Gensel got those two chances. I'm not blaming him for not finishing. The goalie made a really good save on both of them. They could have gone in. It's not like he muffed the chance. The goalie made a great save. Tip your cap. But at least they got those chances, right? So, it's not like they didn't get anything accomplished. Point had one shot in the slot, too. I'm not sure that one was as dangerous in last night's game on the power play in the second period. Yeah. It wasn't as dangerous as the Gensel opportunity, but the goalie made a save on it. So.
And to me, I think it's more of a confidence thing with Bjorkstrand. I just think he's low on confidence.
Yeah, he's fumbling
right now.
Pucks now. I haven't seen him fumble pucks like that previously.
And I think off one of the face-offs, it came to his skates. He fell.
That was during 5-on-5, I think. But yes.
I just think, maybe the right play is just get him off the first power play unit at this point and just say,
maybe
you need to figure it out. Like, let's low-pressure situation. I know it's kind of ridiculous talking about a guy who is a 20-goal scorer, who is as accomplished as a player as he is, that you've got to go that route, but maybe you do. I think also, too, with Bjorkstrand and Point, you also want to see just more chances 5-on-5, too. I think that's you need to start to see them push play. We thought, what was it, a couple of games ago where Point came down, drew a penalty. He was going hard to the net. It might have been the Rangers game or the game before. He had a shift where he took it hard to the net, and it was like, whoa, okay, that's Braden Point.
Yeah,
we're just not seeing a lot of that right now, and I think it's for a variety of reasons. I'm not sure why, and they get, like I said, they get paid a lot of money to figure that out. I think they will, but to me, it's eye-opening even more than what we've seen. So we'll take some questions surrounding it. Again, I wouldn't try to reinvent the wheel, but I would try to see what else you can do realistically within the confines of your team to snap out of this, because the power play now has become, I think,
it's a story.
problem.
It's a storyline, and it's a problem.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
They're going to have to figure it out. Let's get to Saturday's game, because this got a lot of attention from the end of the preseason. Everyone's like, November 15th, Curtis Douglas added. They added him for this one game. They called up Saber and all this stuff. All right, we had no fights in the game. It wasn't that
incredible.
The Lightning weren't willing to fight. They started Sabrin on the ice with Point and Kucherov, and Sabrin multiple times was willing to fight with some Florida players, including AJ Greer, who was not interested. There was one play in the first period when the line of Sabrin, Finley, and Douglas had an offensive zone shift, and they had a great game. They may have been the Lightning's best line in the Florida game. We'll get back to that. They had one of these shifts in the offensive zone where they were buzzing, and there was a whistle. The puck actually followed Sabrin. I can't remember why they blew the whistle, but I saw the replay. Sabrin actually, after the whistle, kind of is along the sideboards, and he kind of like snaps it toward Bobrovsky, which is a no-no, right? You shouldn't be doing that after a whistle. And Ekblad doesn't like it. And Ekblad kind of comes at him, and Sabrin looks at Ekblad, and Ekblad just backed off. So as much as we can say, well, Ekblad, left the game in the preseason. Like, he remembers what it was like to be on the receiving end of a Sabrin punch, and he wanted no part of that. And it certainly looked like Greer wanted no part of anything the Lightning were offering, whether that was because he didn't want to be off the ice for 5 minutes or what. What I had said, my suspicion was, and I know you and I talked about it, Eric and I talked about it a bit on Friday's show. My feeling with Ekblad was that that's Hagel's choice. At this point, if Hagel wants to address things with Ekblad for what happened in the playoffs last year, that's up to Hagel. I didn't really think the Lightning were going to go out of their way to come at Ekblad to the extent that Sabrin did it in the preseason. Greer is different. Because to me, Greer has not had to answer for what he did to Hagel in the preseason.
Yeah.
He fought Radish. That's not it. Darren Radish stood up for his teammate in that preseason game. Greer, as I have said and used this expression, paying the toll. Greer has to pay a toll. That's what we saw on Saturday. It didn't happen in that game. The Lightning are not going to forget it. At some point, AJ Greer is going to have to answer for what he did to Hagel in the preseason. It hasn't happened yet. I do think it will happen at some point. And then once it happens, that may be it, right? Which is typically how it works. As for the game itself, there were some scrums after whistles. There were some penalties called. There were some roughing minors assessed and all of that. It had a playoff type intensity. This was a low shot, low scoring, low chance game. What did you and I talk about going into that game? For the Lightning to get points out of that game, they were going to need to defend, and they defended. Now, the Panthers have had a quiet offensive year. They have. If you take out Marchand, which you're not going to do, and he's maybe been their MVP this year offensively, and Reinhart, who I think has double-digit goals, but most of his points have come on goals. The Finns, Luostarinen and Lundell, don't have a lot of goals, but they have assists. So it's basically those four guys who are doing most of the scoring for Florida. Sam Bennett has 3 goals. We're almost 20 games into the season.
Yep.
Carter Verhaeghe has 2 goals, and he scored on opening night. So since opening night, Carter Verhaeghe has 1 goal. When you're pulling out Tkachuk and Barkov, you're going to need production from the other guys that typically produce. Marchand has, and he did on Saturday. Reinhart has. The Finns, I'm calling them the Finns, Lundell and Luostarinen, have to the extent they've facilitated. But I think the Panthers are in the bottom 5th of scoring. So understanding that scoring has been a little bit of a problem for them this year, the Lightning D'd up. There were not a lot of scoring chances that they allowed. And that was a big key to their victory. I don't think the Lightning had a ton either, but they had more.
Yeah.
They had more than Florida. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the quality of their chances. I mean, Finley had the 2 breakaways. I mean, they had chances. They just didn't have a lot of them. But I think they had more chances than Florida, and the chances they got were more dangerous than Florida's. That was the sort of game it was. I thought given that they were missing, as we say, 7 of their regulars, although they've been without Nick Paul all season, but he's one of the 7. They were missing McDonough. They were missing Hedman. They had to kill some penalties. The 4-minute kill in the third period up by 1. They got a huge block from Lilleberg during that 4-minute kill where it looked like Verhaeghe had an open net and Lilleberg blocked it. And then they got the puck down the ice. I thought it was a terrific team win. And what we saw from Sabourin, Douglas, and Finley was great cohesion between those 3 players. I think they gained confidence as a line when Sabourin scored against the Rangers. And as I said, I thought they may have been the Lightning's best forward line against Florida. Why was that? I think it had something to do with they had room for themselves. These are big, strong guys. They were playing in sync.
Sure.
And the Panthers play with a snarl. They didn't play with a snarl against those 3 guys. They were not winning puck battles against the Finley line. The Finley line had room. Look at the goal that Finley scores in the third period. It starts in the defensive zone.
It does.
Sabourin comes up with the puck. He's got all kinds of room. No one is pressuring him. The Panthers are a forechecking team. They didn't get near Sabourin. He has time to feed Douglas. Douglas has room, and he chips it down the ice. And, Sabrango, the defenseman, looked like he stumbled, and that's how Finley got around him. But that was how the game was going for them. And I agree with you. I thought in somewhat limited action because the Lightning were falling behind in the third period and they didn't play them as much. And Sabourin took the 2 penalties. But I thought the line showed some chemistry against Vancouver as well. But the Panthers looked like and I mean, maybe I'm overstating it, but to me, they looked like a little bit of a different team. They were less aggressive. They were less in your face when the Finley line was out there. And for the people who were like, Sabourin is a, minor leaguer, and like the guy's played almost 100 games in the NHL, okay? Curtis Douglas, they just got him, like, he has shown that he can play at the NHL level. I believe that. He's a smart player. I mean, you can watch him. He uses his strengths, and I'm not talking about his physical strength, although that's part of it. His reach, his ability to anticipate where the puck is. He's a smart player. And that was a very nice chip pass he made to Finley in the breakaway. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this line is going to stay together. As the Lightning get healthy, you would figure, particularly Sabourin, who was, down, would go back down to create room. But it's nice to know the Lightning can put these 3 guys together and they give Tampa Bay really good minutes. They're not just, as Marty St. Louis famously said, clock killers. Like, they're not just out there to help the other 3 lines rest, right? Sure. And survive a shift. And the last thing I'll say, and this was a key point of the game for obvious reasons. The Lightning had a horrendous power play on Saturday at the beginning of the third period. It's 1-1. They'd had a good first period. Panthers pushed back a bit in the second. Panthers got 3 power play chances in the second that helped them. They scored on one of them. So it's 1-1 going into the third. Lightning got a power play in the opening minute. Ekblad took a penalty. Opening minute of the third. I think he actually tripped Sabourin. It was a terrible power play for the Lightning. It was their worst of the game, and the Panthers got a lot of momentum from that kill, which then fed into 5-on-5. And it wasn't the first shift after the penalty ended, but it was the second shift after the penalty ended. The Panthers had 4 shot attempts and 2 shots on net. So 2 of their 4 attempts were on net. Vasilevsky makes the save on the second shot. We have a whistle. There's a face-off in the Tampa Bay end. John Cooper sends out for that defensive zone face-off Finley, Sabourin, and Douglas. Momentum is going against you. You just surrendered a power play where you gave momentum to the other team. They are pressing. They just had a good shift. I mean, I'm not sure they had great A's, but they were applying pressure. They're leaning on you. You got a defensive zone face-off. Is that a situation where you would send out a line that you were just looking to kill a shift? No. John Cooper, they gave Cooper confidence that they could go out and do the job. So Finley wins the face-off. They get it out of trouble. Eventually there's a hand pass. I don't really remember the hand pass, but I watched the play-by-play and it had it on there. So that's like 20 seconds into the shift. It's a neutral zone face-off. Now you're out of the defensive zone. Coop could have pulled them off the ice. He didn't. He left them on the ice. Mm-hmm. They stay out there. The puck does come into the Lightning's end, but then they do the breakout and they score the goal.
Yep.
So that said a lot about where they were being viewed in the eyes of the coaches. I mean, we're not talking 4 minutes into the first period. We're talking 4 minutes into the third period of a 1-1 game where momentum is starting to go against you, and they reversed it. And Finley scores on the breakaway, obviously a great storyline. First NHL goal, gives them the lead, turns out to be the game winner. And, that line earns very, very high marks. And then we had more power plays after that. The Lightning had 2 sandwiched around the 4-minute kill. They got through the 4-minute kill. Their 2 power plays didn't do much. It stayed 2-1. I thought the Lightning did another very, very strong job during the 5-on-6. Who did very, very well in the 5-on-6? Girgensons. I think Girgensons was out there as they pulled the goalie, the Panthers did, with just over 3 minutes left. And the Lightning had a unit of Kucherov, Gord, and Girgensons out there. Of course, they're missing a lot of their regulars. No Hagel, no Sorelli. The D were different. You normally have McDonough out there. He wasn't available. And the Panthers had a lot of ozone time. There may have been, was there an icing in there? There may have been an icing in there. The Lightning couldn't change. About a minute and a half is burned. And finally, we get a whistle. Panthers call timeout because Maurice wants the same 6 guys out there. Coming out of the timeout, the Lightning do make a change. I think Point came out to take the face off. But Girgensons stayed out there. It was Point, I think it was Point, Gensel, and Girgensons. And the Lightning eventually got the puck out. Point and Gensel went to the bench. Gord came back on. Or at least Gord came on the ice because he was out there for the empty netter. So what worked by Gord especially and Girgensons even more especially.
Yeah.
Girgensons basically had a 2-minute shift. Mm-hmm. They gave him the timeout in there for him to rest up, and then he got the empty net goal. So look, you had guys step up when your regular unit for a 5-on-6 when you're up by 1 late in the game isn't available. So again, they did a pretty good job of limiting dangerous looks when the Panthers had the goalie on the bench, and then they iced it with just under a minute to go. Great win. Unfortunately, last night's game took some of the, the shine off of the Saturday win. But look, the Lightning, they have 20 points. They got 2 games left in this 10-game segment. If they can win both of them, which is going to be a tall order, they'll be back on playoff pace. If they can win one of the 2, they will at least have met playoff pace in segment 2, and they're still 2 points back. Obviously important for them, in my mind, to get at least one of these 2 games before we head on to the third 10-game segment. But, of the 2 games, they were able to beat the division rival on the road, which is a very, very positive sign.
A lot of good things coming out of that game, no doubt. Let's get to some questions before we do that, partner. Tonight, enjoy some Refrum. Smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Refrum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Refrum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. All right, let's get to some of these questions. Mythos says, very rough game last night. Yeah, I would say that. Tampa Bay says we have some serious bad puck luck on home ice.
That's been part of it the last 2 games, I would say. Although I remember that Zub scored on opening night. I remember it hit the post and hit Vasilevsky in the back and went in the net. These things tend to even out over time, but it does feel like, at least at home this year, a lot of the breaks have not gone the Lightning's way.
Jack says, why is the team so absolutely against splitting up Point and Kucherov on the power play? Like, we need a change, and it's not going to be Radish for Hedman or Hagel for Bjorkstrand. Just split them up.
Well, look, I don't know if that's on the table. Was it Jack who had that?
Jack, yeah.
The reality, though, is if you're pulling Point off the power play, assuming you're going to keep Kucherov on there, now you're taking another righty off the power play. So, look, if you're going to go all in and say Kucherov's going to be on the left and just kind of walk downhill, make it a downhill power play, then yeah. You could load up the lefties. The Lightning have a lot of lefties.
Mm-hmm.
But Kucherov likes to be on the right. He's proven to be extremely effective on the right. And if he is on the right, you want righties to be available for one-timers.
Thomas says they need to get Ollie off the power play, the first power play unit. Every time the puck came to him, he fumbled it on the wall every time, which allowed the Canucks to apply pressure. Yeah,
You were mentioning that, Greg.
Yeah, we talked about
I mean, that was more last night. I'm not sure we've seen that every game. I mean, he did have the 17 shot attempts against the Rangers. He wasn't fumbling pucks then.
FK322 says, really good performance against the Panthers last night's game in the first period and into the second. They had control of the game. They then got lazy and just plain stunk in the third. I'll use that word. Stunk.
Thank you for
in the third.
doing audible on that. Well, where they stunk, I think it was mostly with their D zone. They weren't hard in front of their own net.
Yeah, I would.
Momentum played a factor, though. I mean, it was, a minute 40 seconds. They went from up 2-1 to down 4-2. I mean, that's getting a punch to the gut.
No doubt. Jack comes back and says, I love Point as much as the next person, but taking him off the power play unit number 1 isn't the end of the world. Just put him on power play 2, not on the bumper, and let's just see what happens, you know? Yeah, we do. We get it. I think these are things people do when you're struggling. And that's why I said at the beginning, you know, look, that could be an option. I tend, Jack, to come from the camp that you've got to let those guys figure that out. And I know you want to split them up. What does the ice time look like, though? If Point goes on the second power play unit, he might only be getting out there 15 seconds because the first power play unit may be taking most of the time. So now you're taking one of your best offensive players, not only on the team, but in the game, out of that potential opportunity and delegating him to, 15 seconds with, other guys who typically aren't as dangerous as a Kucherov. I think some of this is they got to work it out. I get the need to want to change things around. I understand that, believe me. And one of my solutions was, does Kuch become more of a shooter? Keep everybody there, but does he become more of a shooter until things get settled down? Don't know. We'll see how that plays out.
I would just add one thing, because we haven't heard from Anthony, but if Anthony was going to write in, Anthony would say, put Gensel in front of the net.
Yeah.
I mean, Gensel is a very good player tipping pucks. We saw that last night, and he has scored some power play goals tipping pucks. That would basically be acknowledging we're going to go to more of a meat and potatoes type of approach, and you could even have a double screen, like you get a Point in the bumper and Gensel almost top of the crease, but you're really limiting then what you can do at the circle,
right?
Because that goal line extended pass now is not really available to you.
Chris,
but that would be a different way to go without totally rearranging everything. But you're really going to be then relying on pucks to the net, pucks to the net, pucks to the net, right? If that shot from the middle at the point is not open because there's too much traffic there, go to the side and throw it to the middle.
Yeah.
Throw it to the net. You got Gensel at the top of the paint in this instance.
Right. Chris says, also good game Saturday, incredibly frustrating on Sunday where they just stopped playing. Point and Bjorkstrand are going to have to figure it out soon or we're in trouble. Power play also needs a serious overhaul. I don't know if they're going to go serious overhaul. Maybe.
Yeah.
I have no idea what Julian would do. My sense is they don't for various reasons. You're limited, by the way, what you can do. I know a lot of people have mentioned the Steven Stamkos scenario, but there's a whole other situation you've got to handle if he's coming here. What are you doing to give up? And where is he playing? Outside of the power play. You're just not going to have a power play specialist. You gotta be able to play 5-on-5. And look, there's a reason they didn't want to pay him a certain amount, and it wasn't being paid like a top 6 forward. But we'll see how that plays out a little bit more. Alan says the results of the back-to-back was the first line of a Dickens novel. So proud of them.
Which Dickens novel, Alan?
So disappointed with the Canucks game. Vasi was great on Saturday.
I think he's referring to it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Is that a guess? That's about the only first line of a Dickens novel I know. Paul Kennedy tells me he reads A Christmas Carol every Christmas.
Good for him.
I'm like, you were dedicated.
That's awesome.
I've watched A Christmas Carol. I'm not sure that I would have read it. I've watched the Donald Duck version of A Christmas Carol.
Many of those, partner.
Yes.
Many of those.
Yeah, look, they've shown that they can play at a very, very high level. You don't go into Sunrise and beat the Panthers with everything at stake, missing 7 regulars, if you can't reach a certain standard. And Sunday's game, for a lot of it, they were at a pretty good defensive standard. Let's not forget, I mean, the Canucks had 1 goal through 2 periods. They had 7 shots and 18 attempts. And not a lot of scoring chances. I mean, the DeBrusk goal may have been their only scoring chance, legit scoring chance in the first 2 periods. I mean, the save that Johansson made on Elias Pettersson prior to the DeBrusk goal was a fairly good chance. The Lightning had come out to kind of, I guess, try and challenge the shot, which is how DeBrusk got so open at the top of the crease. But the Lightning actually, I mean, I didn't like what they were doing in terms of their urgency in the second period, and their power plays hurt them at the end of the second. But they defended pretty well in the second period, too. It was in the third period that the wheels came off.
Let's get to maybe one more here before we sign off. Trying to get somebody that hasn't responded or participated in the show. Timothy says power play is killing off the penalty themselves, overpassing and keeping it along the wall. I think they need some new eyes looking at it. Look, I think all options are on the table within reason. Within reason. I think all the coaches at this point are probably looking at the power play. I think you are looking at things from a personnel perspective. But again, I don't think you have to be practical in your solutions too. Like I said, you can sit here and say, well, look, we need to completely revamp the first power play unit and trade for Steven Stamkos and do all these things. Okay, in a perfect world, maybe that makes sense. We don't live in that. And so what realistically do you think the coaching staff will do? Not what you want them to do. What do you think they will do? Coaches tend not to be too kind of knee-jerk reaction type. I mean, overhauling the first power play. Okay, well, what does that mean? There's no doubt. Look, not only has Bjorkstrand and Point struggled, but Hedman has also struggled. So I get it. There's 3/5 of your power play, number one power play, that hasn't been where it needs to be. 2 of those 3 guys are going to be borderline Hall of Famers when their time is done. You're paying them a lot of money not to take them off that unit, partner. Like, you got to figure it out. That's part of it. It might be a lot of it. And so that's kind of where I'm leaning, but I understand the need to want to make moves.
I have to ask you, Greg, as I saw this the other day, the Penguins have the number 1 power play in the NHL. I don't know if you followed them that closely this year, but it wasn't that long ago that people were just mystified how they were so bad in the power play. Now, I think that was the year Gensel was with them until they traded him at the deadline, so he may have been part of that, and he's obviously not on the Penguins anymore. But I have to believe that 3 of the main players on the Penguins power play, Crosby, Malkin, and Karlsson, who were definitely part of the power play that struggled a couple of years ago, and they were down, and they were kind of down where the Lightning is right now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, last time I checked, they were over 30% on the power play. I have to believe those 3 guys are still, involved in the power play, and maybe Rust. I mean, I'm not sure what they did to turn things around, but sometimes, unfortunately, like the power play, the struggles can take on a life of their own. And I think that does, on some level, explain what happened to the Penguins a couple of years ago. Now they have a new coach, right? And maybe it's just like what the fan was saying, fresh eyes.
Could be that. Yeah, could be
that.
But,
talent just doesn't disappear, right? And sometimes you just have these mystifying stretches where, the greatest players in the world in this game, it just doesn't happen for them.
Yeah.
So the impetus is on the Lightning and on their top guys to snap out of it and to get it going. And I think that will bleed into 5-on-5 play too.
I would agree.
Which is also what they need.
Karlsson, by the way, has played much better this year than he did last year, which has been a big difference.
And some of it is, it's just, are you playing better?
Yeah.
Right?
So we'll see. I think also a new coach coming in, and there might be some things structurally they're doing that's a little different than what Mike Sullivan was doing. But be that as it may, they are producing at a pretty good clip. So we'll talk more about this tomorrow. New Jersey comes to town. We will talk about
Yeah, they have
them.
a lot
It's
of
good
injury
team.
issues
Yeah.
too, including Jack Hughes, who had a team dinner accident, cutting his finger.
Yeah, I mean, that's awful.
Brett Pesci's on long-term injury. They're missing
Some
more than
guys.
just a couple of guys and some significant guys. So, but they're a very good team. They just went into Washington and won a game. It was in the shootout, I think. But the Lightning are going to have to be ready. They got stung by the Devils in the second game of the year.
We'll have that for you. Maybe we'll get a guest as well, talk about the game, and break it all down. Partner, great job.
Yeah,
as
you
always.
too.
All right, Dave Mishkin there. Thanks to Steve Versnick, Jared Johnson. Thanks to you for listening. We always appreciate you guys. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.